Hello again, and welcome back to A Likely Story. I'm your host, Grafton Stringer. Well, you know, there's been so much bad news, so many things to feel down about lately, that we here at ALS decided that we were going to shake all of that off and talk about something much happier and healthier this week: sports and exercise. So, a recent study showed that runners who never stretch out before hitting the road are no more likely to suffer injuries than runners who stretch out every time. In fact, they found that the most injuries occurred in runners that only stretched out sometimes. So the takeaway here for me is to fully commit to something before you start it, even if that's a commitment to do it half-assed. Now, I'm one of the runners who never stretches out before a run, but I also strongly suspect that I'm one that real runners secretly refer to as, well, an obstacle. And I like to watch Olympic events like everyone else from the comfort of my couch and think to myself, gee, I could do that, only to later find out that I put the limp in Olympics. But if you're looking for an example of how to do something really half-assed, well, the upcoming 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio de Janeiro should give you a lot to work with. Now, if the marathon of problems plaguing the Brazilian Games, from the pollution to the crime to the corruption, with a side order of some more crime, well, if all of that doesn't make you feel proud and a little smug to be American, I don't know what will. While the clean and jerk has been a staple of the weightlifting competition for many years, it looks like the host country has convinced Olympic officials to include a new event this year, the snatch and run competition. And the Brazilian team is looking particularly strong, with several young competitors seen here showing off their skills on the streets of Rio. Oh, and there, one athlete is dragging his competition across the pavement. Yeah, that's a maneuver made popular by the Russians in their regional games against Ukraine. Now, from the moment the Olympic torch arrived in Brazil, the flame, an enduring symbol of peace, competition, good sportsmanship, and camaraderie with all of the peoples of the... Oh, no. I see someone has thrown water on the Olympic torch. That's right, early on a Brazilian man tried to douse the Olympic flame by throwing water on it, apparently on a dare by friends. Not a great start. But it turns out that the torch-related mayhem wasn't over. Just a few days later, a near-threatened species of jaguar was shot dead after it escaped its handlers at another torch relay event. A tragedy for sure, but almost immediately Olympic officials expressed regret by saying, quote, "We made a mistake when we allowed the Olympic torch, a symbol of peace and union of different people, to be exhibited next to a chained wild animal." But then the official quickly added, "But don't judge us too harshly, we've all had our lapses." I can't believe they let him run free like that. And at the same site where beach volleyball competition is scheduled to take place, human remains washed ashore, setting up what's possibly the darkest answer ever to the call for little help. But in what may be the most ominous sign yet for the upcoming games, the Olympic cyclepath failed in its primary function as a cyclepath and collapsed when it was hit by a large wave, plunging two riders into the ocean almost 100 feet below. You had one job, psychopath, one job. Organizers went on to blame shoddy construction and systemic corruption for the failure. Then the police from Rio threatened to go on strike during the games because of incredibly dangerous working conditions and poor pay, even going so far as to welcome visitors to the airport by holding a sign that read, "Welcome to hell." And if things weren't tough enough for them, now they face a lawsuit for copyright infringement by the Ferguson, Missouri police for stealing their motto. Soon after that, testing of the waters where the Olympic rowers, sailors, and swimmers will be competing revealed that pollution containing not just antibacterial resistant bug, but what scientists are calling a superbug, and a pissed off superbug. But in fairness, they've had several years to train for the arrival of the athletes. Now, all of this doesn't even take into account the troubles Brazil is having with dengue fever and other diseases, with countries like Kenya pulling out of the games out of fear of their athletes contracting the Zika virus. And it was just announced this week that 4 of the world's top golfers, that's got to be a misprint, golfers? Golfers? Really? At the Olympics? You never know. It was just announced this week that 4 of the world's top golfers would not be competing this year in the Summer Games over fears of contracting Zika. But let's face it, losing golfers from the Olympics is like losing the Olsen twins from the lineup of the next Expendables movie. Even South Korea announced that they would be doing the most South Korean thing ever and would be wearing Zika-resistant clothing during the opening ceremonies. Turns out we have a sneak peek here. Now look, all of this is truly terrible news for the host country and for the athletes. And before we feel too superior as Americans, we should remember that we're in midsummer already, and this country has failed to do anything about the impending effects of the Zika virus, even though the CDC has concluded the disease causes birth defects, and almost 500 pregnant women in this country have been diagnosed with Zika already. Luckily for us, we don't have any mosquitoes here in Florida. And last week, the House approved a $1.1 billion spending bill for funding to fight Zika, but only with the provision that no funds go to private healthcare centers and clinics, including Planned Parenthood. So let's see if we have this straight. They came up with a plan to fight the Zika virus by defunding organizations on the front lines of preventing it in the areas most at risk. Awesome. Then in mid-July, unable to come to an agreement, Congress recessed for the rest of the summer without taking any action at all. I bet they're just off to take a lovely bike ride in Brazil. And that's a likely story. Thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Grafton Stringer.